So, I just got a free screening of Batman v Superman, and my expectations have been met. Want to know more? Keep watching. Zack Snyder is an extremely divisive director. He's the director that goes for the visual storytelling more so than the narrative, well-paced, subtle standard of filmmaking. His work has received mixed results, ranging from critical success to critical mixed reviews to critical failure, but I personally enjoy his work, ranging from remakes to adaptation, making of use all the materials that can bring a comic book to life, and I admire that. With Batman v Superman, it's an interesting story here. Okay, so I'm going to list the positives. First off, Ben Affleck is great as Batman and Bruce Wayne. He does a spectacular job with the film, mixing his scariness with sympathy and empathy for his character. Superman is serviceable, even though he could be a little bit wooden. Wonder Woman was like completely spectacular. She was great. Even though, I gotta get to the negative about that, but there's some things I wish there was more developed about her, but we'll get to that. And of course, the visuals and the action are fantastic. I mean, it looks spectacular, right out of a comic book. Zack Snyder is like the best at doing this kind of thing. The visuals, the action are splendid. And I have to admit, I admire the dark tone it takes. It tries to be new, it tries to commit to something different, you know? And I appreciate that, because it seems like every comic book movie has to be all jokey and witty, but I'm glad that there's some diversity added to the genre, especially with a movie like this, where it could really definitely benefit from the dark tone. Now for the negatives. Okay, well, let's get one thing first out of the way. You know how Doomsday was in the trailer? Well, I would say he's totally wasted in the movie. Personally, I think he is just misplaced in the movie. He could have been in another movie on its own. Maybe a standalone spin-off. I don't know. Maybe another Superman movie. I don't know. But he shouldn't have been. I felt he shouldn't have been in this movie. And also, he looks completely fake looking. It's very obvious CGI used in the film, and I think that looks bad. Also, I'm not really a fan of Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor. Personally, he feels more like a Joker than he feels like a Lex Luthor. And that's a problem because it completely becomes inconsistent with his comic book character. Lex Luthor is power hungry, not crazy or filled with chaos, because that's what it seems like they're trying to do in this film. They're making Lex Luthor into the Joker, and it becomes inconsistent with his motivation, and I believe that it hurts the film and his performance as well. Also, I want to talk about Wonder Woman's lack of character development. Yeah, that's a big problem. It seems like Wonder Woman was just placed there. It doesn't feel natural or earned, it just feels like forced to me. But I loved Wonder Woman. She was good in the movie, but it just felt like the placement of her in the movie felt so forced that I couldn't believe it. It didn't feel natural. And I'm sure this could change, but that's what benefits from having a Wonder Woman origin story before having Wonder Woman and Batman v Superman, which they clearly didn't do, but it just feels very forced in my opinion. And lastly, I want to talk about the questionable moral decisions made by the two heroes and the pacing. Okay, well, I think the moral decisions of the comic book characters, I have questionable problems with it. It's not that I like having them do the same thing with Superman and Batman. It's just that it doesn't feel right with the tone they're going for. We're supposed to believe that these people are nice people, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels like they're just really terrible people on how they handle their situations, and it goes against the origins of the character. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I'm just going to say that be cautious of how you hype this movie, because you might be disappointed when you watch it. I would just say that if you don't like the decisions that the characters are doing, I would argue that it's a dark tone. That's what they're trying to go for. They're trying to do something new with DC, and if you can accept that, then I'm sure you'll enjoy this movie. And lastly, I want to talk about the pacing. I really want to see that Batman v Superman 3-hour cut, because it feels like this movie's been cut out. The pacing is really off. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the editing. They took some scenes out for time. I'm sure that the 3-hour cut will give a more coherent narrative, but I think the pacing is kind of off. So yeah, that's basically it. But you know what? I really enjoyed the movie. I enjoyed it a lot. I would give it probably a 7 or an 8, mainly because how the conflict was handled. Not the best story, but it's still a great conflict, and I enjoy the characters. And if you can accept this dark tone that they are taking, I'm sure you'll enjoy it too. So yeah, there's that. And then there's the fact that DC is pretty much getting a lot of bashing from critics right now. I don't know what that's about, because I personally like the movie. It had some problems. It's not a perfect movie, but it's still enjoyable. Right now, at this very recording, I see that it's on Rotten Tomatoes a 39%, and it's going to be mixed reviews, probably. I'm not really sure, but it's really low. Like, I don't even think Marvel has a lower Rotten Tomatoes score than that. So, you know, I feel kind of bad for Zack Snyder. I mean, yeah, sure, he's not the best storyteller, but he cares about what the comic book has. He cares about delivering the comic book, you know? I mean, yeah, it's not the best storytelling ever. It's not the best pacing, but it's still fun. And if you accept these changes, if you enjoy these types of movies, I'm sure you'll enjoy it too. I enjoyed it, so yeah, there's that. And I'm guessing that maybe they'll probably replace him if Warner Brothers feels that he's not up for the job of Justice League. Maybe they'll replace him with Ben Affleck. We might be getting another Tim Burton, you know, Joel Schumacher, but you never know. I think it's most likely going to be Ben Affleck, for God's sakes, directing the Justice League movie, but who knows? And I mean, it'll do well at the box office. It's going to do spectacular at the box office, but the critical success is important too. That also matters to people. Maybe not necessarily to the DC fans, but it matters to people. Mostly the studio heads making the film, because that can affect the box office. Not in a small way. I mean, it's not going to affect Batman v Superman, but it might affect Justice League if they don't replace Zack Snyder with another director. You know, someone who has talent. Maybe George Miller or, you know, Ben Affleck again. You never know. But I enjoyed it. If you enjoy this comic book movie, enjoy dark tone, if you enjoy lots of great action and The Dark Knight Returns, you'll enjoy this movie. But I advise you, don't take your kids. Kids should not see this movie. This is strictly for adults, for the content in the film, okay? I think kids will be very, very bored with watching this film. But I could be wrong, you know? Kids are smarter than I give them credit for, so yeah, let's see what happens. Alright, thanks for watching Game Marvel, and as always, you can subscribe.